much for joining us for today's talk hosted by Cyber Ireland in conjunction with Cyber Skills, MTU and UCC. Today we're going to cover some of the potential career paths that you might have into cybersecurity. We're joined today by Richard Parker, Director of Cybersecurity Infrastructure at Dell Technologies, Sorcha Healy, Principal Engineer and Lead Data Scientist at McAfee, and John McSweeney, Director of Cybersecurity at McKesson. During this talk, they will cover their various different career pathways into cybersecurity, and it may give you some insights into the nature of how you can migrate into this field. Before we begin, we're going to ask you a brief question on what you think are the key traits that build a person or make them capable of migrating into cybersecurity. The link to this question is here. It's via WooClap, and I believe this may be being shared with you shortly. So we'll give you a minute just to collect your thoughts on this and participate in this particular vote. So there we go. Thank you, Aoife. My colleague Aoife is sharing this link with you currently. Hi. Oh, good. I see some folks are filling that out. While this is occurring, it's important to note that cybersecurity is quite a diverse field, and some of the traits and skills that are really important in this area might be counterintuitive to you at this point, but hopefully at the end of the talks as delivered by Richard, Sorcha, and John, might give you a little bit more insight into what kind of skills and traits may be very useful for you in this area. And it might surprise you to know how unusual some of the folks are that enter into this area. Okay, if we'll give it just another minute and we can pop on then to and remember, during the discussions in terms of career paths, you can pose questions in the Q&A pop-out, and we'll revert to those at the end of our discussions, and hopefully we'll get to a couple of these questions after Richard, Sorcha, and John have talked about their various different paths. Right, if we can pop back. Okay, so we're seeing some initial traits popping out in terms of some of the main things that people find important. And it's good to see inquisitive called out and curious called out in terms of part of this careers. Hacking and hacker always come out as a key word for cybersecurity. Coding, interest in computers, and it's also good to see helpfulness and desire to protect others is a core trait. So if we pop back onto the core slide deck, excellent. Perfect. And so we'll digest this and see how we might change minds during the course of this presentation. Okay, so in the interest of getting out of the way of the core speakers, I'll introduce the first speaker. So Richard, if you want to talk a little bit about where you came from and how you ended up where you are.
Sure, thanks, Sean. So I think for many of you guys, your journey is about to begin. So what I'm going to do here is just tell you about my journey and how I ended up in cybersecurity. It wasn't a path I actually started on that I thought I would ever end up to, but there was a lot of twists and turns that led me to where I'm at today, and just kind of give you guys an idea of those paths that I took. So I entered university really thinking I was going to be a medical doctor. That was my plan. I loved science. To me, science was the best thing ever. And going into university, I had the best time learning everything about science. one of the activities I did while I was in university is actually participated in the Human Genome Project. That was something done in the mid 90s where we actually sequenced DNA. And to me, it was like, hey, this is really great, something really cool. I really enjoyed. However, by the time I ended my college career, medicine wasn't in the cards for me. Not that I didn't want to be a doctor, it's just, I just really started thinking, is this really what I wanted to do? Um, I still love science, so I thought, hey, I need to continue this journey on science. Why don't I go into pharmaceutical sales? So I applied to 300 different positions in the Northeast of the United States to really get into pharmaceutical sales. I got 5 response. So for me, what I learned was from this whole experience in the beginning of my early career was, what you think you're going to do today may not be the path you take forward. However, not deterred, I had the opportunity to relocate to England. And when I was in England, I got a job working at Harrods department store. I'm not sure if many of you people have ever seen Harrods department store, but it's really, really cool. One of the things that I learned there was I was in a graduate program. In that graduate program, they taught you leadership skills and gave you the opportunity to just kind of work all around different parts of the store. During my time there, I actually met a lot of famous people. That included Michael Jackson, the guys from Oasis, George Lucas, from Star Wars. And it was really great experience for me just to meet all different kinds of people. However, it was here at Harris that I had the opportunity to really get into IT. They had a program there after I did the graduate program was to take my first job to really do desktop support. To me, it was like one of the things I was missing when I left college was in IT, you got to study technology, same as science, as well as to troubleshoot things. So I spent another year at Harris doing desktop support before I relocated back to the United States. Now, when I got back to Nashville, where I was originally from, I had the opportunity to work for Dell Technologies. Now, at Dell in Nashville back in the 90s, it was really a manufacturing facility. So my first job was to do server desktop support in the Dell factories. Now, the manufacturing process was really, really neat. The way they build computers, seeing all the computers travel around the manufacturing lines and everything else. But one of the other opportunities I had was doing desktop support was I would walk around, help people fix all their issues. And suddenly I realized people started calling me the doctor of PC. So the idea of that I could do what I wanted to do in college, which was learn technology and help people, was translating to the job I was doing in Dell, go around fixing people's computers and PCs. However, as time went on, I realized I really needed to progress my career, and that's where I actually moved into our network team. Now, for you that don't realize what networks is really kind of moving packets from A to B. And for me, it was a really cool opportunity to get involved in troubleshooting Dell's global network. This gave me the opportunity to travel around the world. As part of the network team, I was able to travel to Central America, out to Asia, out throughout Europe. It also gave me the opportunity to relocate here to Ireland. Coming to Ireland in the mid 2000s was very exciting for me in an interesting time. So when I relocated from from the US to Ireland, I was still on part of the network team. Back then, we didn't have a cybersecurity team. It was something that was incorporated to general IT. However, there were some events that had started occurring that really made people aware that cybersecurity was something that was really required. In the early 2000s, we had our first malware incident that affected all of Dell manufacturing. It really shut down the entire facilities globally. And this was a malware called Code Red. It got the name Code Red because the guys who actually discovered the virus were drinking Mountain Dew Code Red. And that's how the name came and stuck. But it was something that I found really interesting, that how, something that unexpected, unplanned could occur and affect the whole process of the world. So during my time of network security, I had the opportunity to join cybersecurity. So once I joined cybersecurity, it really, to me, was a career path I really want to go to. I think I would really describe cyber security as a job where you have a purpose. So now I wasn't no longer just providing support for people. My job was to protect Dell. So my job went from being activities of day-to-day support to actually having a mission. And that mission is to protect Dell. And I think as you'll see in the news, even the news today, cybersecurity is something that's continually growing fast. And it's a very exciting field to go into. There's a lot of different skill sets that we have in cybersecurity. you don't need to just be the computer programmer, the person who's top of the class. You know, there's a lot of activities in cybersecurity that anybody can come into the field and participate in. And I would really encourage that everyone, you know, if you have the opportunity, look at, you know, what you want to do in the future. And for me, it was really about following my belief and path that I wanted to be participate in science to really help people and do something I really enjoy. So that's kind of my little path to cybersecurity and how I ended up here.
Thanks, Richard. That's really fascinating. It's quite a journey to get to where you got to, and it's good to know that you finally achieved what you were hoping to do when you were a 14 to 18-year-old, and just not quite in the area that you were planning to do it in originally. So I'll introduce the next speaker. The next speaker is Sorcha Healy, and Sorcha, if you want to talk a little bit about your journey.
Thanks, Sean. Like Richard, my journey is kind of not a straight path. It's quite a winding road. And back when I started, it kind of let's reprise a message that the iWish team have, which is like the job that you're doing now wasn't invented when you were in school. So what was my picture like when I was in school? Well, at school, I loved mathematics, and I particularly loved maths with regard to real problems. On the foot of my intercert results, I was invited to the Maths Olympiad training in UCD, and it was all number theory, and I just couldn't get my head around that stuff at all. What I was really interested in was the kind of applied problems, things like geometry, trigonometry, applied mathematics. I loved applied mathematics and projectile motion and forces and applying maths to real world challenges and real world problems. So when I went to university, I went to what was then the College of Technology in Kevin Street, which has metamorphosed it into TU Dublin now. It has a fantastic tradition in applied sciences. And I had never taken any computer courses before I went there. I was really lucky. It was such a broad course at the time. It offered a diversity of sciences, everything from the biological sciences right through to artificial intelligence. And where I kind of fitted was that I was doing applied mathematics, I was doing applied physics, and in first year I took computer science. So the code and the maths and the problem solving were all kind of wrapped up in there. And the physics course covered everything from microprocessors, optics, the measurement of things like color, etc. And the beauty for me was, you know, that scientific rigor and that kind of quantification, that interplay between the maths and the real world problems. And so the other beauty of that course is it had components such as languages and business studies, management, economics, and law. And it kind of gave that diversity of knowledge and that well rounded education that's really served me well moving into the business world later in life. So I kind of still kind of hungry for that interaction with the mathematics. I really wanted to excel in mathematics. I wanted to get a PhD. So I went off to UCD and I did a master's in mathematical physics, which mostly focused on things like general relativity and theoretical astrophysics. And whereas they're very applied and there was lots of interaction with people who did telescopes and all that kind of stuff, it was really a bit abstract for me. And I was really looking to still get my teeth into something much closer to home, literally, and more tangible, you know. So I was looking around for something in that vein, and I came across for my PhD a group in UCC founded by Professor Stephen Fahey, who had recently returned from Michigan to found a group in computational modeling of semiconductor materials. And so I was landed in this lab, dropped into kind of working with Linux, which I'd never worked with before, learning to code in or kind of recovering my Fortran skills from first year, and started learning to program, administer Linux machines, We were wiring together Beowulf clusters, some of the very early beginnings of mathematical libraries, and kind of very, very much relates to my current job now in artificial intelligence. Very similar type of skill set. So that was great. My PhD project was it was called the absorption of H2 molecules on silicon surfaces, and that was a kind of puzzle that I had to solve. Was why could these hydrogen molecules why was it very difficult for them to stick on the surface, and it was kind of easy to take them off. And the uh, the idea was to model the chemical pathway, and it was really great because it gave me that interaction between the physics, the mathematics, the quantum mechanics, and the kind of the efficiency of designing a surface for silicon chip manufacture, which was great stuff. And so after that, I got married, I had a baby, and found myself then working for the Tyndall National Institute for a group of Owen O'Reilly, and we were designing lasers and semiconductor materials for new generation communications devices, working again directly with experimentalists to try and match up science with the real world. And there are devices I designed that are in use today in the semiconductor industry, and in that are at the basis of startup companies in Sweden. So that's kind of is really awesome stuff. But anyway, it got to the point where I had a young family and I was looking to a more permanent career, something that was a bit more reliable than grant funding. So I joined the Revenue Commissioners, and that was really interesting, moving into business. And I got my hands on really good databases, business intelligence, process mapping, project management, fraud analysis, etc. And that was really cool stuff, and really kind of gave me my first look into the kind of data mining world for business. And it gave me the confidence to actually take the next step a few years on, where I took a career break from the Revenue Commissioners and I applied for a job with McAfee as a statistician. And little did I know that that job as a statistician would evolve into something so much bigger. I started off by taking the huge volume of what we now call our billion sensors all around the world, and collecting all that data and understanding the propagation of threats, to a scenario now where I use those big data skills and that computational ability to try and pinpoint new malware in the field. And I really think that it's the breadth of my background and the diversity of experience that I have in lots of different industries that gives me the ability to empathize with our customers, and to understand their challenges. And I can live between that academic world and the business world. I also haven't completely given up my academic interests. I currently have a PhD student as funded by the Irish Research Council, where we're looking at things like ransomware negotiations and other propagation of items in the field. So that's really interesting. Also, I was involved in things like Insights, which is one of our products, which like that tracks malware campaigns around the world in different geos and sectors with big data. So when it comes to traits, yes, that passion to help people, that passion to protect people, that curiosity, breadth of experience, and yeah, remember that the job that you do when you come out of college is probably not even invented yet, but a really broad science background will help you majorly. So thanks very much.
Fascinating, Sorcha. Thank you very much. Really interesting to hear your journey. And for those of you, make sure to keep on asking questions. We'll get to them all later. So if your questions aren't answered, that you're popping up into the Q&A, we'll come back to them later. So John, if you want to talk a little bit about your journey into cybersecurity.
Thank you, Sean. It's really cool to be here, and really looking forward to chatting to you all. I know there was a question in the Q&A about, can somebody with electrical engineering, jump into cybersecurity? And if you go back and think a little bit about what Richard was looking at a career in medicine. He wanted to be a medical doctor. If you compare the critical thinking skills of an electrical engineer, a cybersecurity professional, and a doctor, they're all very similar. They all examine, everything was going well up until this point, something happened, and now you got to analyze what went wrong, and you got to figure it out and move it forward. So certainly there's a huge correlation across the board in terms of any engineering discipline and that capability of transitioning into cybersecurity. I just wanted to kind of address that. I'm going to go way back in time, a little bit before even the audience here, I believe, are somewhere in around 14 to 18. I'm going to tell you about my story when I was 12, right? So when I was 12, I began basically programming video games because I was able to go to Eason's on Patrick Street in Cork, pick up a magazine with a video game in it, take it home to my home computer, type it in religiously, tape it onto a cassette, and make my own video games. So I was really into video games. I love video games. Who doesn't, right? And then that led me a little bit to align a couple of passions I have, right? So I'm really into inventing things. I love innovation. I love coming up with ideas, designing things, inventive problem solving, and a little bit of mathematics in there as well. So the coding that I learned from the video game stuff allowed me to discover fractals and graphics and sort of, kind of doing weird things and creating almost visual art with the computer. And that was very exciting for me, and then that gave me a real passion for making computers do things, right? So that's something I really wanted to do at a very young age. So, and then there was also this kind of, I was a dyslexic student, so I didn't really get on so well in the normal stream of how people were being taught. It was always a little bit kind of different for me, and I thought differently, but I knew I was pretty bright. It was just different in terms of the way school was treating me at the time. And then when I got to 14, I also had another passion, and that was very much about entrepreneurship and having my own business. So I remember foolishly asking my dad for a bit of land in the garden to grow lettuce, right? I thought this was going to be a big winner. I grew lettuce at 14. This was my first business. And I clipped all the lettuce, put it in the box, and I brought it into the city. And I went door to door on a Wednesday afternoon in my school uniform, trying to sell lettuce to people. And that was a horrific disaster of a business. I got one charity sale from a lovely lady over in Capwell near where my nana lived. And the rest, I'm afraid, they withered and died in the heat, and it was just awful. So I've had these kind of little entrepreneurial jumps along the way that I want to share with you. And then I suppose the next major event for me was around 15, 16. We had a school bank, and every fifth year in the school would take over the school bank and run that. And when I had a chance, I computerized we had a computer club basically in school as well. So I was able to kind of join that and was part of a little group of guys that were involved in video gaming basically, and messing around. And so we computerized the school bank, and then we won school bank of the year, and we got an accolade, and there was a little present, and it was all kind of cool. And then everybody was kind of saying, oh, John, you'll probably go and study computers in college. And I did. So I ended up in the Regional Technical College, which then became CIT, and I started studying a degree in computer applications, which was again programming, and kind of excited by all of that. And after a couple of years there of a 4-year degree, I was over in London trying to earn some money over there. And I got a job in a software company. And when I kind of got to the end of the summer, I said, right, I'm going to return back to Cork to college and kind of relaunch my career back there. They said, oh, no, you're not. No, because we really like what you've done already. You've automated so much here, and you've made these computers do things. And they doubled my salary after the 3 months. So it became a lot more lucrative for me to stay in London than to pursue the end of my degree. And so then, that led me towards a kind of another kind of stage at around 21 years of age, I decided to open my own company, right? My own computer company that was going to grow with other companies that were all in an incubation center. And the idea here was that I would provide IT services and networking services to them and help them with their databases and whatever they need and setting up their little offices. And as their businesses grow, my business would grow with them. But unfortunately, my naivety again hit me. It was like the lettuce came back. And the problem was that 40% of new businesses fail in the first 12 months due to cash flow. And unfortunately, that was my customers, so they went out of business, and I ended up after 18 months collapsing as well. So I learned the hard way. And then I was walking around London going, oh, where's money in society? Where's the money? Like, I mean, that's all I need. And it's in the banks. So I decided to target banks basically as a good place to work because they've got money. And that was wise. So for the next 16 years, I designed and developed computer systems and services for the banking industry and got to travel all over the world. And one of the systems I designed, it was a public facing system. So people were able to get reports after they did their business with the bank and have them sitting waiting in their offices when they'd arrive in, the fund managers and whatnot. And these fund managers for that particular bank tended to be governments. So, the clients that I had that were going to use my system were like the government in Singapore, the government in Holland, the government in the States, all that stuff. So, and of course, just towards the end of it, we started realizing, oh my God, what about the security of this? What if somebody, logs in and gets that data and pulls it somewhere else? So I had to design this sort of on-the-fly firewall system with what's all now kind of, this terminology around this nowadays in terms of DMZ and the way that you design this was really, really cool. So I got to invent a very early stage firewall and a secure way of transferring the data. And that came back to me much later on. After my 15, 16 years of a career in the banking sector, working IT and building networks, a guy reached out to me and asked me, would you be interested in coming back to work for HSBC? Do you remember that firewall you designed and built back, 17 years ago? Would you be interested in looking at that? And I was kind of going, that's not really where I'm at right now. I'm working with the university in Cork. I've got like some very interesting stuff going on. But I looked at it and I discovered that what had happened while I was kind of not really focused in on the banking sector and had moved back to Ireland to raise my family, I discovered that this whole cybersecurity thing was absolutely booming, right? There was loads of money in it, right? Not only that, there's loads of jobs. There's 2 million jobs unfilled globally in this sector, right? And there's a whole host of fantastic cybersecurity companies based out of Cork. And I was thinking, I've got to get involved in this. So I launched a company called Fort Knox Networks. I trained myself. I got certified as an ethical hacker, ethical hacker, and that was quite cool, and that gave me a massive boost and a push forward to start securing things for some of our banks here, and then finally ended up in this magnificently cool job with some really cool people at McKesson. McKesson is a distributor of vaccines and a distributor of medicine right across the globe. They've got the whole challenge of delivering the vaccine to all the people across Europe and here in Ireland, and also in the States and Canada. So it's a really exciting space to work in. I asked my kids about this at breakfast this morning. So Molly and Jack were having breakfast. Molly's 10, Jack is 8. And I said, what should I tell these 14 to 18-year-old people about working in cybersecurity and why they should come and get involved? And Jack said, oh, because you can hack, right? Because he likes hacking, right? And that was pretty cool. But Molly said something that I thought was really, really, really interesting. Molly's 10, and she said to me, she thought inquisitively, and she said, because you get friends. And you know what? That is very, very true. I think the thing I value most about my team and my career is my friendships. And friendships are really important, really, really important to me and to to where I've landed. And I shared that with my team this morning as well, and they were actually chuffed. Friday, good feeling on a Friday to realize that friendship is important and to recognize that. And I took that moment. So that gives you a little bit of a rush through on how I ended up where I am, and I'm looking forward to your questions, and hopefully we can kind of help you with any queries you have.
Great, John. Thank you very much. It was very interesting to hear how you journeyed to where you are. Certainly, You know, it was you ended up solving an awful lot of problems in your pursuit of jobs and opportunities. But you know, it's a good thing. It's really good to hear how you know, you can jump around the world. So we're going to do the questions now. So don't necessarily jump directly into the survey at this point in time. So, you know, jumping back to the one you've done previously. But you know, there's a couple of questions that are popping up consistently here. I see a few that are looking at, do you need a core computer science degree, or do you need to be core in computer science? Hopefully, by virtue of the very fact that John, Richard, and Sorcha have been talking, that you know that's not necessarily the case. Sure, it's a benefit, but you know, it's not necessarily the case. But I'll open it up to the panel. So, Richard, have you thoughts on this?
No, I mean, you do not. I mean, we have a lot of people that are part of our team. Some that never went to higher education. I think one of my first bosses had he was a high school dropout, but you know, he took career choices that led him to get to where he was. So I would just say, I think higher education does help position you better, but it's not a requirement. It's all about having the passion and the love and the skill base. So for many people, it's getting that first job, developing their skills, and then moving forward. But no, there's a lot of people that if you survey in the industry, they have a lot of science background, a lot of military background, and then you know, there's other areas, but oftentimes you'll find computer science at times, at least back in our generation, were not necessarily the first choice getting into cyber.
Great. Any thoughts on this, Sorcha, maybe?
I'm thinking about the diversity of the people who work in my organization, and all of those pieces of the jigsaw that they contribute. We have people who work with our customers and directly, and it's their job to be, you know, people who can explain to customers and, you know, be really good personalities. We've got program managers, so people who have more business related skills. They understand the science, but they keep everything moving. And you know, we've got very deep technical people in networks or malware analysis or whatever, and they're highly specialized people. We've got mathematicians, and so, you know, if you have a passion to protect people and you're interested in technology, I think there's a segment in a cybersecurity company for you. And you know, we've people who started in arts, people who started in IT, people who started in business. Yeah.
It's funny, Sorcha, you say that. Our former CISO from a couple of years ago, he had a degree. He was an art major. That was his degree. So.
And John, how about McKesson?
Yeah, I think one of the things I'd like to point out, and something that we're, you know, particularly biased towards, and we see a huge trend globally in our security operations and services, is the attraction we have to hiring people that have served their country. So if you've joined the Navy or you've joined the Air Force and you've been involved in maybe even the Irish Army, and certainly a lot of my crew have had, my local crew in Cork have had the privilege of serving their country. I think that experience, when you come out and you take a choice after you spend your whatever number of years in service, to retrain and maybe take a master's in cybersecurity, or you know, a certificate course or a diploma or whatever, and you begin your career, they're sought after. They're sought after because of their operational ability and their ability to deal with intelligence and cyber intelligence and so forth. So certainly there's a strong bias in that area. And then, like, you know, when I think about diversity and the key to having lots of people's minds working together, this is really important. You know, this is really, really important for our organization, to have people with different educations, with different backgrounds, different cultures, different ideas, different ways of thinking, different problem solving capabilities, coming together and focusing on a mission. And our mission at McKesson is basically to ensure our patient safety, you know, and I really think that's key as well, that you have that whole element of different cultures, different backgrounds, and we're really, really open. Now, that's something that isn't necessarily cybersecurity. It's more the culture of a company, you know, and that's a slight distinguishing thing. But I'd like to kind of just park that there then.
And that brings us very importantly to a key theme in cybersecurity and generally, but certainly in companies more broadly, the power of diversity in a company, and critically the power of kind of diversity of skills, of the way of thinking. This is a really important thing, and it's coming through in a couple of questions that are more asking, what skills do you need in cybersecurity? I can speak from my own personal perspective. It's more kind of the way you think. And John has mentioned that the way, if you're the type of person that is, you'll sacrifice to protect others. That's a really important trait in my mind in this area, or curiosity, however it's driven, John, potentially. But if you have curiosity, what are your thoughts on that, maybe Richard, in terms of the strength that diversity brings and the traits that you'd look for?
Yeah, I mean, part of our hiring plan is we do look across the globe. We have people from all different type of cultures, which is key. The way people think is completely different around the world. Also, just the difference between people think within local regions. We do encourage diversity hiring. That's one thing which's been exciting for us is we see a lot more diverse talent in the workforce coming up from the college campuses. I have a young daughter, she's getting into computer science, and it's great to see more females getting into cybersecurity, because it's something that historically we might not have seen females within the technology area coming out of the university years ago. Now it's, a lot of our new hires are females. So I think people sometimes too just need to look at the world of technology, and this is something for me as well. I have an older brother who was a real nerd with computers. I wasn't. I was the kid that ran around, played basketball. I did all the sports. He sat and, did the coding and all those kind of things. And one thing it is once you get into computers, not everybody is just the people that are antisocial. There's a lot of great social people in computers and science. And I think that's where we're seeing the next generation come, where everybody's seeing that, computers is the way to go. And cybersecurity is one of its main areas. So it's really great to see the diverse talent coming up from everyone coming into the field.
And you called this out previously as well, Sorcha. So you might have some thoughts on, the strength that this offers, and critically the traits that you're looking for, as opposed to, or how important do you feel it is between either a trait or a skill that you're looking for in a team member or in a new graduate?
So the most important traits, I think, are passion about what you do, our greatest passion. You see the pledge behind me on the wall. That's our pledge wall, and all our new hires go and sign that pledge as they join the company. And it's all about, that protect. Back to what John was saying about, the people from the military who are, prevalent in our industry. We've quite a number of them too. And it's about harnessing that will to make sure that the dark side doesn't win, to protect real businesses, real customers, and make sure that the world is safe. So that's the number one thing that I think is important. Anything else, when you have enough passion, your job isn't a job. And that's very much how it is for me. I often don't feel like I'm working at all.
Great, and I suppose we'll ask one last question, because I see we're running out of time. What aspect of your job excites you most? I like this question because there's certain things that I love about this area, and I'm sure each of the three of you have one particular thing that excites you more than anything else. So I suppose I'll start with John.
I really feel it's the humans. Like the humans vex me quite a bit, because sometimes they cause a lot of the problems that we have to respond to. But that's not the element I'm looking at right now. I really love working with a high performing team. I love creating that. I love being part of that. And when I look back over my career in all of the different companies that I've worked in and the experiences I have, I really think about those people that excited me. And even if it was just sitting down having lunch with them, and having a conversation about something, you know, not necessarily the work. And so the people that you meet and the people that you work with is, you know, that's got to be the number one thing for me. You know, overall, like the technology and, you know, I mean, the modern stuff in terms of AI, machine learning and robotics and automation and orchestration, all that cool stuff, that's secondary to the people that are in the industry, really, you know. And in Cork particularly, I know there's a really close-knit community, and it's great to be part of that.
And Richard?
I think it's the mission we're on, really. I mean, we are in an industry that's constantly changing. I mean, we are protecting our companies against nation states, the bad guys. It's constantly driving technology to change consistently. So the one thing I think for most people that join cyber is that technology that you're looking at today could be different in a couple of years. It's all about moving forward and addressing all the threats that are occurring.
And Sorcha, I think you have the final word in this.
So I love working with data. I guess that's a given, and that's my safe place. But another thing that I love is working with the members of my team, teaching them what I know, sharing my insights, and giving them a leg up with a piece of code, or, you know, something in Spark or big data processing that will kind of make a job run and get some results out. The teaching piece is something I really love.
It's great. That's good to hear. Being a teacher myself, but this is great. So this has been a great talk. I hope you've learned something from it. Apologies now that we didn't maybe get to all of your questions. Something that I need to call out before we close down the talk is that, you know, we were this webinar, this talk, is part of a series of activities, and one of those activities is the Cybersecurity Academy summer camp. So you know, that's running in the next few weeks. There will be follow-on talks from Cyber Ireland, you know, covering this area, and stay up to date in terms of the area. There's a lot of exciting things. I see somebody had a question about the HSE attack that's just recently occurred, which is, you know, we're looking at that at the moment. I don't have deep insights to it, and I'm not sure. I can't ask any of the panelists if they do, and if they do, they probably can't disclose it at this point in time. But we hope you enjoyed it, and you know, hope you'll think about a career in cybersecurity. This talk may come back to you, you know, after you've finished your degree in terms of your options, or you may decide at this point in time to look at it. There's lots and lots of different ways to get involved. So, you know, look at UCC's website, look at MTU's website, look up Cyber Ireland, look up Cyber Skills. All of these organizations are there to help you and to bring you on board. And in particular, look at, you know, the major companies that are around the area. As John mentioned earlier on, we have a huge cluster of cybersecurity companies around Munster more broadly. You know, they're doing very, very exciting stuff. So thank you all for tuning in, and you know, hopefully you enjoy the rest of your lunch.
Thanks, guys. Ciao, ciao.